Hi, this is Jeremy Kellett, Director of Recruiting at Oakley Trucking, and I'm your host for this podcast. This is episode 108. So on today's episode, I got a special guest. Dr. Stephen Bennett is joining me today, and we're going to talk about health with truck drivers, specifically physicals, getting physicals, what it takes, how do you prepare for a good physical, and just some of the health concerns with truck drivers that are out there today and what he sees, from his eyes. And I think it's going to be some really good information that we got coming up here. So we're going to talk to him here in just a minute. But first, let's do let's hear from Arrow Truck Sales, our sponsor. Keith Wilson at Arrow Truck Sales in Springfield, Missouri is currently offering $1,000 off your first month's payment when you finance with transport funding, or $1,000 off the truck price if you bring your own financing. They're also discounting the cost of an extended warranty by $500. Arrow Truck Sales has been a long-time partner with Oakley Trucking, and that's because they specialize in first-time truck buyers. They don't do any leases. They have the best used trucks money can buy because used trucks is all they do. They don't sell any new trucks. And the biggest reason that Arrow and Oakley are partners is service after the sale. It is very important to us at Oakley that when we refer you to a company, that they are a good company with good people. They do what they say, and they understand our requirements. So give Keith a call at 573-216-6047 for a good used truck, and tell him you heard about it on the Oakley Podcast. Okay, let's get started right into this. This is such a good topic that everybody needs to hear, especially, our owner-operators. I want them to get good information from the Oakley Podcast, which, as you know, that's why this thing started, is to try to get good information to our owner-operators and their families so they'll be more successful in doing business. And this is just another avenue of how we can do that. So be sure and spread the word about the Oakley Podcast. I appreciate everybody listening and watching on YouTube. Be sure and comment and subscribe, like us, and check us out. And if you got anything you want me to talk about, any subjects that we need to bring up that you think will benefit owner-operators, let me know. Let's get started with Dr. Bennett. How you doing this morning, Dr. Bennett?
I'm doing good.
I appreciate you coming in and doing this with me, even though you're just down the road.
Yeah.
It's very convenient. So give our listeners a quick introduction of you and your background, just so they know who we're talking to today.
Well, in my career, I have my primary field is chiropractic. And then I have a specialty degree in chiropractic orthopedics. So that is basically the non-surgical treatment of trauma injuries. And so my background goes quite a bit into trauma. I do have a vast background with that, treat a lot of injuries. And so with the DOT, it's kind of like a whole different mixture, a whole different thing. But because of my background in that, I have an interest in DOT. I have an interest in OSHA requirements to be able to help drivers, to be able to help companies. And so back years ago in 2014, when they mandated that we had to be certified to do this, it changed the whole perspective of things, because there were so many doctors out there that did not want to go back to school to get certified to do this, because so many people were doing it wrong.
Right.
And because of that, that's what led to them policing the doctors into saying, okay, if you want to do this, we're going to have you certified federally as a federal medical examiner to do these physicals on truck drivers, because you're failing us. And as a profession, the medical profession, we were, because there was too many people that would go in and they just sign off.
Oh, yeah, we definitely remember those. So they came up with the registry. So where are you from? You from here in Little Rock?
I'm from Little Rock here. Grew up here, born here, left to go to school, and then eventually came back here.
Got a family?
Got a family, wife and 4 kids, 7 grandkids.
Awesome.
One on the way.
One on the way.
Yeah.
Be number 8 on the way.
Number 8 on the way. So I've been doing this for a long time now.
Do they live fairly close?
They live everywhere from Austin, Texas, to here locally, to Jonesboro, to Ohio.
Oh, man. So stretched out a little bit.
They get stretched out. Yes, they do.
Well, that's good. Speaking of that registry, that I'm sure most of our listeners know that if you are to be able to give a DOT physical, you have to be in this registry as certified to give a DOT physical. How hard is that to get in that registry? What, without going into depth, what do you got to do that?
You have to go through a school or a class with it. Okay, so it's about 27 modules. It takes about 12 to 14 hours on an average to go through everything. That's just getting through the classes. Then you have to really study for the test, because the test is going to consist of somewhere in the neighborhood of about 120, 125 questions, and you're going to need to make 80% on it to pass, okay? So what happens with a lot of times is, what I said a while ago, is doctors didn't want to go back and have to take a test to say, hey, can you do this? So once doctors go through the class, which is mostly, it's not how to do a physical. We know how to do that. We've been doing that for years and years. It's all about the regulations. Yeah. It's about the rules and to follow so that we have safety out there. That's the premise of this. We want to protect the public. We want to protect the drivers. We want to protect the companies. So all of that goes hand in hand to work together so that the medical physician themselves are doing a good job on these. So this kind of help ensure that. And then they also audit, the Federal Motor Carriers Safety Administration. They monitor and audit what we do. And so when
random audit?
There's random audits that take place. COVID kind of slowed that down a little bit, but they do random audits, especially sometimes if there's been an accident. And they find that somebody maybe fell asleep at the wheel. Okay, so what's that background like? What happened? Are they on a CPAP? Are they not? Have they been tested? Was it recommended but they didn't do it and found someone else to pass them? So that's where it comes into play with the things that.
Is there follow-up training, like to be in that registry?
There is. There's follow-up training. After 5 years, you have to do a follow-up training course. After 5 years, after 10 years, you have to get recertified. That means you got to go back to a class. You got to go back through testing again.
I bet that's a challenge, just staying up with all the rules, because, golly, I mean, because you see so many people with different ailments or different medication or different things wrong. I mean, that would be a challenge to be up on all the rules that you got to be.
It is. It changes all the time. We've seen vast changes in things just since when I started this in 2014 and got certified. There's been numerous changes that have taken place, from things with diabetes, things with vision, medications that have changed. So all of that stuff is.
So Dr. Bennett does our Oakley's physicals. Every Monday we send a group down there to you to get the physicals done. And how long have we been doing that? A year or two?
A little over a year.
A little over a year. So, it's very convenient. This is right down the road and able to do it on a certain time every day. But, when we try to prepare our guys as recruiters, we're talking to a recruit that's coming in, and also we can talk about the recert guys too, get recertified that are already here. But some of the new guys coming in, we're always asking them questions. I mean, we're playing part doctor as a recruiter, because
right.
because we've learned some from you that you better start playing part doctor, if you get them prepared to come take a physical. I mean, what are some of the things that you're seeing maybe now that's common that messes guys up, or when they come in to do a physical? I mean, I know one is blood pressure.
Yeah. Blood pressure is the number one thing.
Is it?
That affects drivers, because of the fact that as a driver, you're sitting there for so long, and then you're out on the road, you're eating stuff that's not always the best for you out there. So the weight gain can come on, especially as we get older. It's easy to gain the weight. And then what happens is the more mass we have, the more blood pressure, more pressure it takes to kind of push through that. And then there's genetic things that cause blood pressure. It's inherited. So there's so many things, but blood pressure by far is number one thing that we have to deal with. So when people come in to be prepared, the one thing that we get so often with somebody that's not had blood pressure issues is they tell us, well, I didn't have blood pressure problems last week or last month or 3 months ago when I went to my doctor. And sometimes they don't. Blood pressure can change suddenly. Somebody has a condition. We've seen people have a condition like COVID, and then all of a sudden later on their blood pressure has changed with it. And so I saw that with myself, that my blood pressure went up some after I had COVID. So exercise helps to lower that blood pressure. Weight helps get that down, helps with that. Like I said, some things are just genetic that you can't help. But if people will understand that with blood pressure, there is a lot of issues. It leads to, can lead to stroke. It can lead to heart disease. It can lead to lots of other problems. So keeping that under control is very, very important.
Well, and I think, because we'll have that, guys come in and, well, my blood pressure's never, I've never had a problem with it. Well, have you checked it regularly? Because I'm going to say no, people don't check it regularly. And the only reason I say this, Dr. Ben, is I just recently started doing that, because I'd gone to the doctor a couple times. Well, that's the only time it was taken, is when I'd go to the doctor and I wasn't feeling good or something, and it was high, but I hadn't been taking it. So I actually bought a blood pressure machine and started logging it, so I could give something I knew myself, and I could give something to the doctor. Here's what my blood pressure has been doing, so that way, and I don't think many people, I may be wrong, but I don't think many people log their blood pressure numbers every day or every other day like they should, and they come in and then all of a sudden it's high, and you're like, what are the blood pressure, real quick, I don't want to get way off on blood pressure, but what's the numbers got to be?
You need to be under 140 and under 90. So 140 over 90, be under that. That's where we want to be under, in order not to have to be maybe on a blood pressure medication or things like that. So
okay.
The misnomer out there is if somebody has high blood pressure that it's going to stop them from driving. It does not. It just changes the time we can give somebody, unless that blood pressure is way high. Like if you're up 180 over 120, yeah, we got to disqualify you temporarily until you bring it under control. We had that happen to a driver not long ago. His blood pressure was too high for me to give it to him. So what happened, I said, go to your primary care. Let's get this. They can give you medication, things like that. Let's get it under control where we can at least give you a time period in there. So we can give them 3 months or so.
That I know who you're talking about. That was Bobby. He's a success story, actually, because he came back and he was originally mad, I think, because the blood pressure was high and, and you couldn't give him a physical. And then, he went home, saw his doctor. He called me, and he's called me 2 or 3 times thanking us for helping him, because now this is a priority to him. He started walking once or twice every day. He's got it down real low, and he just come back last week, I think. Took him 3 or 4 weeks to get it like he wanted, but he realized after the fact that something needed to be done, and thank goodness he got it done. That was a great story.
I tell you what, people get angry all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Especially us guys. We can get angry about, because we think that, we're indefensible. We're going to plow through this. And so that's the thing that happens is that, look, the thing I explain to people so much is you want to take care of your health on your time, being able to do it when you need to, when you want to, rather than there be an incident like a heart attack or a stroke where you have to be off work now, you're not getting paid, you're not driving. So all of a sudden, life changes dramatically, especially with a stroke, because recovery is so much more difficult. So what we want to do is we want to help those people. And if drivers would realize that when the doctors come in, we're not trying to keep you from driving. We need the truckers out there driving. Believe me, we need your services out there. But we want to make sure that you can do that safely. And the thing that's so important is not to have you have a situation health-wise that takes you out of working. And blood pressure can do that because it can lead to these other conditions that are devastating. So we, just try when we tell you, hey, we got to look at this blood pressure a little closer, or we got to get you on, do a sleep study, or we've got to get you back over to your doctor to check out this blood in your urine or things like that. That you just, take that as this was a warning shot to help you control things so you can do it on your terms rather than an incident.
And that's a great point, because that's the male in us, the DNA in us, that we want to wait for something to happen.
Yep.
Then I'm going to address it.
Yep.
Well, that's not a good plan. That's not a good plan at all. We need to be proactive in trying to figure out how our health is and what we need to do to take care of it, because we've had some instances where guys come in and get physicals, and actually, I don't know if you have, but I know prior to using you, we have them find a guy that had some serious problems.
Yeah.
And whether it's out of his blood and urine or problem, I mean, he's like, and then you find out he has some major problems that he's got to take care of. And that's really, I like that part of, don't wait till it happens to you. Go ahead and try to prepare to go, and don't be scared. You don't want to be in that seat like, oh, I'm scared to go to get a physical because I'm afraid I'm not going to pass. You need to be in that seat of going, yeah, I'll take a physical anytime you want me to.
Yeah, you do, because if you find something, let me get it done on my terms rather than wait until there's an incident that takes me off work.
Yeah,
where I can't do that. And that's what's so important with this, is that you are in control of what happens. And we want to keep you driving, but we want you to be safe at that. I mean, I have so many stories of people that have gotten mad, come back later and be happy about what we found, because other people have confirmed, hey, you've got this condition. It's a good thing they found this, because if not, there would have been more serious. And then I have other people, too, that have gotten mad and stayed mad and then figure out how they try to bypass the situation only for an incident later on to take place.
What's some of the common problems or mistakes you see drivers making when they come to take a physical?
I think the big thing is that if they're taking a physical and they've been extremely tired because they've been running and going and they're running in to get a physical, and their blood pressure normally might be a little bit low, but now they've gone without sleep. They've been taking things to stay awake, like caffeine, where they've been drinking that, and energy drinks and all of that stuff. And then they come in, so they're tired, they've been running, they've been going, they've been taking these energy drinks. Now all of a sudden, their blood pressure's up a little bit, okay? And normally it may not be. So get a good night's rest. Don't have caffeine to drink of any type or any nicotine to take in for at least 4 hours before the physical. Okay, try not to eat, because when you eat, your body's blood pressure goes up to help digest food. So try not to eat, a couple hours before you come in. So if you do that stuff, drink plenty of water, try not to eat, try not to smoke or drink caffeine, and have a good night's sleep beforehand. If you do those things, then you're going to be set the best you possibly can to have a good physical. And if your blood pressure is still a little bit high, well, hey, that's your opportunity to take care of it, so you don't have a situation.
Do you run into problems or issues? I'd say issues with truck drivers not telling you the whole truth?
Yes. We get that quite frequently. And sometimes they'll, through questions and things that we'll ask and things to that nature in their history, things start to come out. And they filled out their history form. And this is real important for drivers, because if you fill out your history form, just be honest about it, because here's where it bites drivers big time. If there should be an accident, may not even be their fault, but they go back and they investigate everything and look into it. They're going to look into your physicals. They're going to look into what was your health. And if they find something on there that you were not forthright about telling, and it could be a little thing that really didn't matter that much, like a past surgery, but if they find that, then they put into question everything else that you said.
Yeah, you're a liar.
You're a liar.
Yeah.
So, and especially if, for instance, it was your fault. They're really coming digging for anything then. And so we've had people that's not listed that they were on medications. We've had people list that they didn't have a big one is that they didn't have a CPAP, because they weren't on a CPAP, that they had not had a sleep study when they had a sleep study. Okay. But the sleep study may have shown that they did not need a CPAP. But because they didn't need one, they said, no, I haven't had a sleep study. No, just put it down. Hey, I had a sleep study. We may want to get a copy of it to see so we can put it on our records, but that just helps you. And so all of those things, just being forthright about it, being right up front, that helps. Because when you are, guess what? your blood pressure doesn't go up as high either.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you're lying about stuff, it tends to raise your blood pressure and stuff. So.
And I know everybody, they fill out that form of checking everything that applies to applies to them, and they're afraid of circling that little circle because he's going to ask me about that, and that could be a problem. But you got to tell the truth. And I think this is something you got to remember. This is federal. This is the FMCSA. I mean, you're dealing with some federal regulations that have got to be accurate. And
you can lose your CDL.
Yeah.
If you're caught lying on that thing, and there's been an incident, and especially if that led to a problem. Okay, so I've done.
You got an example?
I do. Situation where a guy was diabetic. Okay, and we started doing a company's physicals because of this. He had gone to a doctor. The doctor did not do an A1C test on him. If you're diabetic, then expect the doctor should do an A1C that tests how your blood sugar has been for the last 90 days. Is it controlled well or not? They did not do that. And the reason they didn't do that is because the guy lied about being diabetic. Okay? So when he lied about being diabetic, then they didn't do the A1C. So when they didn't do any of that stuff, things just keep happening. Well, the guy's driving. Fortunately, it was a pickup truck. It wasn't a big tractor trailer rig. It was a pickup truck, but they had a trailer and it's loaded with equipment, stuff on it. So it was heavy. But the truck had a GPS unit on it, and the company noticed that he would slow down, speed up, and but no one ever called him or anything. And it wound up that the guy was diabetic. He had his sugar levels plummeted, went into a diabetic coma with the thing, crossed off the freeway, through the median, onto the other side, hit 5 cars, killed 2 people. Oh, no. And the company told me, they said, we had never had an incident like this, but what happened was just a circumstance of events that took place. And then, we've had other ones, that was a very tragic one, but we've had other ones where somebody would not tell us the truth about things, and they didn't tell the last doctor either. So you have to dig into these things, and sometimes it's been the doctor's fault. One thing we've run into with companies is they'll say, well, the last place we was having these physicals didn't do that, or they didn't tell us this, or they didn't tell us. I said, look, we followed the regulations.
You got a little of that from Oakley, didn't you?
We got a little bit. We did, but we get it from everybody.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's doctors out there that really don't take this very seriously, and we have numerous drivers tell us, well, this is the most thorough physical we've ever had with this. And the good thing with that is because a lot of times this is the only physical that driver's going to get all year. We may be the only doctor that driver sees all year. So if we wind up doing one of these physicals and we find something and we can help that driver and we help save them from having more health issues, then that's a good job that we've done. And sometimes they do get upset with us, but the good thing is we also have those people that come back and thank us after they've gotten upset with us. But what's really tough is when it's the first physical for a new company and it just went crazy bad, okay, because the person had lots of issues. And we've had that happen too. And sometimes the company is very glad that we found it, and then other times they hadn't been real glad because all of a sudden we're having their driver have to jump through some hoops to continue to drive. The important thing is we want to keep you driving, but we need to follow these so that we can do it safely.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate reason behind it all. I mean, you've got to be a safest driver just because we are under the scrutiny of the FMCSA and we've got rules to follow. Well, you've got to protect yourself the best you can. And that's one thing Oakley, we have constantly been always tried to find a good doctor to give good physicals to make sure that we know everything we can about that CDL driver where we can be confident that he's out there running safely because he's running under Oakley's liability insurance. And you know how those judgments are these days. If we're found guilty, well, we're guilty till proven innocent these days when it comes to truck driving. And so, we all got to work together on that, and it's not any way of targeting the driver. We're trying to help that situation and make sure he is a safe driver and operating with a safe company. And you got to have the doctor that has that same mentality in mind, because we're all in it together.
We are. And when it comes to the drivers and being safe out there, most of the time what happens is that when the driver comes into me and they've got some type of issue, most of the time, they realize that, hey, there may be a little something going on, but sometimes they don't. And so when we can find these issues and correct them and get them back doing stuff, then they stay out there, they stay driving. And as the drivers, if you can think about one thing, when you fill out these forms to get your DOT physical, do you want to risk losing your CDL because you lied on a form, and then you had in an accident, they investigate, find that you did, and then you're not driving at all with it? So just look at it like that. There's very few things that actually stop you from driving. Very few. Most of them are things that will just change the time span till you can get it under control. So a lot of people make the mistake. I've had drivers tell me that when they had high blood pressure and they haven't had it before, that they think that's going to take them off of driving, or they need a sleep study. Well, I can't drive till I get the sleep study. Yes, you can. We can give you time for all of that stuff.
Yeah, they're afraid it's that, which most of them, they know, hey, I'm in bad shape, I'm going to the doctor, this could not go good. So any avenue I get here to make me look better, I better do it, because I've got to have my CDL. I just bought this truck. I got a truck payment. I just quit a company job. I'm already making a big step here. This has got to work. I got to make this work. And you get some of that where they're worried about it. But like you said, everything we've run into, I mean, I don't think you've disqualified anybody with us that have not come back and fixed it and went to driving. I mean, it's like you said, it's most of the things are fixable.
They are. They're fixable. And I'd tell you one thing with drivers too. If you can, as a driver, if you can do one thing, make sure that if you're on blood pressure medication, if you're on a diabetic medication, that you are taking that as prescribed, because that right there, I've had numerous drivers that said, yes, they're on medication, but they hadn't been taking it like they're supposed to. And then that affects them. And so that type of stuff will limit your time, because all of a sudden your blood pressure is high. So, take your medication. That's a good thing to do. When you're coming in, stay regular on that. If you're on a CPAP, bring in your CPAP report. That's going to save you time for the last 90 days. Because if you bring in 90 days, I can give you the full time on it. But if you don't, then we're going to have to wait, put your determination pending.
Well, and if you're on one, you better be using it.
Yes, you got to be using it.
What's that time, 70% or?
It's 70%. You got to use it 70% of the time, greater than 4 hours a night when you're using it. Okay. So the thing that happens if you don't use it, the federal guidelines are really tough on that, because they had such a problem at one point with daytime sleepiness with people, that if you are not compliant, the guidelines make you jump through lots of hoops with this thing. For instance, we've had drivers that were not compliant. Well, I tell them that according to the federal guidelines, now they say you have to show compliance. They want to make sure you're doing it, so they only allow us to give them 30 days then for a physical before they have to come back and show 30-day compliance. Then they make us say, now you got to show 60-day compliance. So now they come back in 60 more days. Then they say, now you got to show us 90-day compliance. Show that in 90 days. Then they say, now that you've shown 90 days, now then we can give you a year if you're on a CPAP. But all of a sudden, they've had 3 physicals that they wouldn't have had to do had they just...
So are you targeting people? I say that, like it's mean or something. But are you sleep apnea and making them use a CPAP, is that... let me put you on the spot here. So do you get? I mean, does the FMCSA send out an email and say, "Hey, y'all need to be targeting"?
No, they
CPAP?
don't. They don't do that. They don't target that at all. The thing that happens with it, I tell you what happened back about 2016. The FMCSA came out with this guideline that was so poor. Their number one thing to determine if you needed a CPAP or not was the size of your neck. Okay, if you got greater than 17-inch neck, may need a CPAP, they said. Okay, that was the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard of in my life. And there was such pushback from the doctors, especially on that, and even the carriers themselves, that they finally came up with more of a guideline. So now there's multiple factors that come into play. Some of these factors of whether you may need a CPAP or not, or even need a sleep study, the one thing that they say now, if your BMI, that's your height to weight ratio, so if you're 5'10", 330 pounds, your BMI is going to be probably right around 46. Well, if you're 40 or greater, they say you need a sleep study to show whether or not you truly have sleep apnea. Now, I've had numerous big guys, numerous of them, that did not have to have a CPAP. So sometimes people...
Did they have to do the study?
They did the study.
Okay.
And it came back that they were very low. They would say that most people's going to be, even if you do a sleep study, you'll wind up showing mild sleep apnea, okay, a few events. That does not mean you need a CPAP. Until you get up over about anywhere from 10 events in an hour, mild events, in an hour, and this comes back on the report that we get, you don't need a CPAP, okay? 10 to 14, then it's kind of like one of those marginal things. We look at lots of different factors there to see if we recommend that. But if you get where you're over 15 events in an hour, then you definitely need a CPAP then. But I've actually taken people off of CPAPs.
Yeah.
So, and people a lot of times think if you're on a medication, you're never going to get off, or if you're on a CPAP, you're never going to get off. Yeah, you can. We've had people that's lost weight, exercised, got in shape. We did another sleep study on them. We have to have objective proof that you don't need it. So we did another sleep study. Lo and behold, now their sleep study shows that they have very little sleep apnea events. And so they don't have to be on one. But here's the ironic thing. The people that need one, if they get on one, even if they go into it fighting and screaming, and I had one yesterday that absolutely did not want to be on a CPAP. I mean, he even said, I don't want to be on one, it'll cause cancer. There's nothing out there that says that it's going to cause cancer being on a CPAP. It's just blowing air in you to keep your airways open so that you can breathe good. That's all it does. But I've had so many people come back later on that said, oh my gosh, I'm sleeping so much better. I feel rested. I feel like I got energy now. And so they don't know. And this is even people that are patients of mine that's not drivers, that we also do, sleep studies. But here's the great thing. When you do a sleep study now, used to you had to go to a sleep clinic. You don't have to do that now. You can do these sleep studies at home. We use a company that we send the information to. They wind up getting a hold of the driver. They send them a device that they attach to them to use one night sleeping. They take that device, send it back into the company, and they read it by a sleep doctor reads that to see whether or not they need to be on a CPAP. So you can do it at home. You could do it even on the road.
What's that cost?
It's $250.
Okay, a lot cheaper than
what
when they first come out, it was thousands.
Oh, thousands! You could spend anywhere
crazy.
from $3,000 to $5,000
Yeah.
for a sleep study. So $250 is very reasonable to do that. And so we have a company that we use like that. They take care of it. And I've had drivers say, well, I know you doctors, you get a kickback from these companies. No, we don't make a dime from the companies that do this for us. And, we could have them, we can have those same devices in our office and we could sell them ourselves and stuff. I've just never done that with it because I just let somebody else handle all that stuff because it's something else that needs attention. and they can take care of it with people. So if you've had a doctor recommend that you get a sleep study, don't put it off, because you may not need a CPAP, but if you do, it can literally change your life. Here's something you need to know out there. If you wind up going through life with sleep apnea, it deprives your organs of oxygen, and the research shows it actually takes 3 to 5 years off your life. So, because it wears on your organ system.
I'm a testimony to that. A few years ago, I had to get it done, and it was. I'm so glad I did, because I feel so much better, and I can't go without the thing now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I got them. That's the first thing I pack if I going somewhere overnight. That one right there is not. I'll be turning around, coming back home, and getting that, because it works, and it's helped me so much. Over the last couple of years, for sure. I mean, great stuff. Talking to Dr. Bennett here on the Oakley Podcast, and talking about physicals and all kinds of good stuff, and how you prepare for them, and what the consequences are, and it's good stuff. We got a few more things we want to cover, but first let's take a break and hear from our sponsor, Lube Zone. So I want to take a minute and talk about Lube Zone. Lube Zone has been a sponsor of the Oakley Podcast for a long time. They're good people over there. Jeff and Megan do a great job. They provide good discounts for Oakley owner-operators, but also just a great place to go. They've got 11 locations: Texas, California, Oklahoma, Georgia. They're primarily along major highway exits, which allows easy access. They can do a lot of stuff there. They got full service oil changes, they got tractor and trailer grease, air filters, oil analysis, tire checks, DOT inspections. I mean, these guys can do it all, and we love doing business with them. I actually had one of our owner-operators, he went to Lube Zone. He said, hey, I'm going in here, and I'm going to find out how their service is, if they're fast, and if I get a discount. And I said, all right, you let me know when you get out of there. So he called me back, and he said, I just want you to know that's a great place to go. It's clean, it's nice, the service was great. He got the full-fledged filters, oil change, the whole 9-yard service, and he also got his $40 discount. And you got to tell him you heard it on the Oakley Podcast, that you are with Oakley Trucking, and they will give you a discount. And just great service from those guys. We appreciate them being a sponsor of the Oakley Podcast. And if you're in one of those areas, you look and you go to loopzone.com and you see where their locations are. And if you're close by there, go try them out and let me know how your service was, because we'll give the feedback back to Lube Zone. And check out the rewards program. That's really good too. Just be sure and check them out and let them know you heard it on the Oakley Podcast. Good stuff, Doc.
Good.
I love it. What you want to keep going? You good?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Let's get it. We're seeing more and more of the heart issues. Mm-hmm. We see a lot of guys with just stents or what do you call it? Cardiac.
Well, there's
problems.
different cardiac problems, so there's tons of different ones that you can have.
And we always, as a recruiter, as we got our list, we go down. You had any surgeries, you had any heart problems, you had anything like this, we just need to know. And then you got to bring paperwork in. Mm-hmm. And that helps, I guess, tell you everything, because you got to require it, right?
It does. The heart problems that's out there with stents do not keep you from driving. There's a short little wait period of a couple of weeks or so after you've had a stent. Now, if you've had a bypass surgery, longer wait period.
Okay, so stent, if I just had a stent put in, I ain't got a couple weeks?
Couple weeks wait period, make sure everything's okay and stuff. But you could have a few months wait period with a bypass surgery. Okay.
And if you've had a stroke?
Stroke, physical exam is going to be the main thing with that is, if you've got paralysis on one side of your body, you're not really going to be able to operate a truck,
But say I did have a stroke and I'm okay. What paperwork I need to do?
Then what we'll do is we'll get a clearance letter. We have specific things that the FMCSA says, hey, this person needs to be able to do this. So we will get a clearance letter from your neurologist saying that, hey, he can do this. We have the letters already ready. Everything else, we just put the doctor's names on them, send them to them, we fax it to them, and then we have them sign off on it and send it back to us. Okay. Now, if they will not sign off, because we have that every now and then where they will not sign off because a person's on a certain medication or they've had a certain condition, and they maybe not have been seen by that doctor in several months or maybe even a year. And so in those situations, we'll have them go back in and see the doctor so that they can update their records, because there's certain heart conditions that you're also going to need to do every couple of years, do a stress test for, okay, to make sure that your heart is functioning like it needs to. And so if you know that, once you know that, and people can call us and we can tell them ahead of time what they need to do. But if you can, a lot of times getting those, just bring in the doctor's information with you, because a doctor just saying, hey, he's cleared to go back to work isn't enough, because they do not know. They do not know.
That's what I was fixing to ask you, because I run into that where a driver says, hey, my doctor, cardiologist, cleared me to go back to work. I said, yeah, but he's not. He can't clear you to drive a truck. Is that right?
That's right. Commercial truck is different. Just like if you were flying an airplane or other things, there's certain federal requirements that need to be met. And usually it's not a problem. So we just fax over to that doctor, that cardiologist, exactly what those guidelines are in the letter, and they just sign off on that. So a person would be determination pending till we get that letter back. But the thing with determination pending, a lot of times people still have some time on their card when they come in to see us. They're not down to the last day. So if you're not down to the last day, then you still got time. You can keep driving, and then once we get the letter back, which usually is within 72 hours that we'll get it back. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And then those cases where they just have to see that doctor again, then we let them know that the doctor will not sign off on this until you go back in, because you haven't been in a year.
Yeah.
And they want to see you to say that you're still okay.
Yeah.
So the doctors do not know what these qualifications are by any means.
Yeah. They may clear you to go back to work, general work, but you can't go back to driving a truck until you get checked out by a doctor that's in the registry, which is what we talked about in the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like flying an airplane. You don't want the guy flying the plane just to be, his doctor say you can go back to work. There's federal guidelines to being able to fly that plane, and you want to make sure that person is safe enough to be up there and doing that.
Yeah. You want to make sure Mike Tyson's not a passenger.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. I heard about that.
I did too. I don't know where that came from, but
well, if he is a passenger, don't antagonize him.
Yeah, I mean,
okay?
don't bother him.
Don't get drunk on the plane and then antagonize him after you've been doing selfies earlier with him and being all friendly and everything. So yeah, not a good thing.
Oh, that's a good story. One other thing I know is all over the board, though, is medications. We have had a couple instances where guys come in and they've just taken something over the weekend, or I don't know specifically what it was, but it might have been for pain or for, headaches or something. And it doesn't necessarily delay a physical, but what it's been doing is delaying a drug test result.
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends upon what medication they took. Here's the primary thing they got to be careful with. They will take someone else's medication. Okay, their wife, their friend has a medication, says, oh, take one of these pain pills. Okay, but it happens to be, something that's a narcotic. Mm-hmm. Okay, wasn't their script. That's going to show up in your drug test.
Yep.
Okay, so that's going to give you problems. Now, if somebody's taking a narcotic for a specific reason, they can still drive. They can still be functional. A lot of people are. And even with a drug test, if they've got a prescription for it, they're being monitored, that they're taking this correctly and they're using it as they're supposed to, then that doesn't prevent them from driving. So not all, pain meds are going to,
what are some of the medications that you have trouble with if a guy comes in and says, I'm taking so-and-so? Is that borderline that you have to?
Well, you have to look at pain medications on how it affects them, because we're going to have to get a clearance letter from the doctor on how that's affecting them. The other thing is if they're on a depression medication.
Okay.
We want to make sure that they're not having bad depression events when they're driving a truck.
So how do you find that out?
Well, we have to get a clearance letter from their doctor saying that, hey, here's what this guy does. Here's what this lady does. She drives this big, 36,000-pound vehicle down the road going 70 miles an hour. Are they stable enough where they're not going to have these manic depressive events? They're bipolar. Are they stable on their medication where they're not going to have one of these events? Because we have a lot of people that's on medication for anxiety, depression, other things that's been there. It's well controlled. They're doing just fine. And they can be on that, but we want their doctor to look at it and say, yes, they've been stable, they've been doing good, so now we can clear them based upon this criteria from FMCSA.
Well, I know that's things like that come into play all the time, and they got to be diligent about it and make sure they're doing things right, because I think that's a big point of their doctor telling them one thing is not the same as a doctor that gives DOT physicals.
Right.
Because they don't know the rules unless they are registered to do it.
Yeah, and they don't know the criteria for it, so we provide that for them, and that helps us speed this on along to get that driver, certified if at all possible. And rarely do we have it where a driver cannot get certified by the doctor signing a clearance letter. Most of the time, if there's an issue, it just simply go back in so the doctor can update their records, which is reasonable because they're putting their name on there saying, hey, we think that they can do this. So that's reasonable. Used to things like insulin wouldn't let us certify a driver, but now that's changed. So now we can certify drivers that are on insulin. There's just a form that their prescribing physician has to fill out concerning their insulin use.
And what else? You mentioned to me earlier they changed the eyesight rule.
The eyesight rule, if you have to have a vision of at least 20/40 to pass the eyesight test. So let's say somebody's 20/50, 20/60. In the past, that would disqualify them from driving. They would have to go through a federal vision exemption program. It took about 6 months to do that in order to be able to drive. Now they've changed that. As of March 22nd of this year, the vision exemption has gone away. That no longer is there. You can't get a federal vision exemption. If you have an eye that you can't see well out of at all, hardly, you can get, you go to an optometrist or an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor. There's a very specific exam that they do. We have the form, give it to the driver ahead of time. Go in and get this before you do your physical. That way you don't get on determination pending. Okay, you get it all done ahead of time. If you're diabetic and you've had an A1C if you've had an A1C test in the last 90 days, bring it in. We don't have to redo it. So that's just good things to help the driver. But if they are diabetic, we can get that done. And if on the vision test, you get that done by the ophthalmologist, and now then if everything looks okay with that good eye, what they found, and the reason they changed this, is they had people on the vision exemption, and they did some research and studies and found that these drivers that were on the vision exemption were actually very safe drivers. So what they did then, so they decided that, hey, we could probably go ahead and change this as long as they can pass this other exam. Really? That we can change this. But it was all based upon research that they decided to do this. Used to, if people were on Chantix, medication to quit smoking, because it could mess with them and have them have all sorts of delirious side effects and stuff. They didn't want them to people to be driving, but they found that was very, very unlikely to happen. Was so rare that they changed it and said now you can be on Chantix and and still drive. So the number of medications that people are on, seizure medications is the big thing. If you had seizures, you're not likely going to be able to drive.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're going to have to go through an extended period of time of being seizure-free and not requiring seizure medication. So seizures is the big one that really cuts people out, with things. If they got such a bad heart that they can't, their ejection fraction, how much their heart will pump out is bad.
If you got a defibrillator, you can't drive?
defibrillator, you can't drive. No, that's
But
not
you have
changed.
a pacemaker, you can.
Pacemaker, you can.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, they don't want that old defibrillator going off during the middle of a drive somewhere. 'Cause
Right.
That will that'll get your attention.
Well, the big thing is that we see in the office is the recertifications. The guys waiting to the last minute to go get their physical updated. And I know, guys, it could be frustrating because it's due you may get a 1 year physical or at 2 at the most, and things get away from you. But you gotta be you gotta be on your game to get this done, because what happens is you wait till the last week. You're trying to work. You're trying to get into the doctor, get the appointment, and all that, and then you don't pass the physical. Well, guess what? Then, like you said earlier, now they're off. Trying to get this thing handled and get it done, and we have seen that time and time again to where they didn't expect it. Didn't do their homework ahead of time to try to be in the best shape they can, and I get it. I'm there too. It's hard. It's hard to make me do it, but there's a difference in me and then him having to drive for a living. And he's got to get recertified to make that money, and that's something that we see all the time in the office of guys can't pass physical to get recertified. So, and to explain a little bit about, we require anybody coming to work here to go do a physical, bring them over there to you. And that, because the system is made to where that's not supposed to happen. All the doctors are in the registry. Every company should be able to accept the physical that they currently have. The problem with that is we see discrepancies with doctors, and we have to take it in our own hands because it's our liability insurance and our company that's on the line along with the driver. But we have to feel confident that they've gotten a good physical and are safe drivers. And and we constantly are finding stuff that the prior doctor didn't, which you mentioned earlier. It's very frustrating. I wish all the doctors in the registry were on the same page. It's just it's hard to do. So
the guidelines are there. I mean, they're there, but not everybody keeps up with things, and not everybody does stuff. And then some people get, overly aggressive, like the 17-inch neck thing. Okay,
Yeah.
You got 17-inch neck. You got to do a CPAP, get a sleep study, which is crazy, but they do. And what you mentioned is so important about the drivers not waiting to the last minute, because we've had so many people that have come in to us. Because we do your physicals, but we do for other people and people that just walk in. And my goodness, how many people get down to this is their last day. And if you've got anything that delays that, and, Murphy's Law is going to be, of all the times, this is what happens today, that it gets delayed. I tell people, when people come into us because we used an electronic system, they should start getting a reminder about a month before their physical.
Oh, that's a good idea.
To their cell phone and stuff. So we try to help them in that. So when they get a physical from us, no matter who it is, we try to help them that about a month ahead, they'll get a reminder. Then a couple of weeks, they'll get another reminder. In that last month, if you'll get your call and get your physical scheduled, even if it's a couple of weeks out, at least it's down there, it's on the books. You're going to, and then do everything you can and be there for that physical. But at the very least, try to do your physical, have at least 2 weeks left on your card, so that if anything is going on, 99% of them can get solved in that 2 week period, and it doesn't stop you from driving.
Yeah, that's great information and advice. Well, I sure appreciate you coming in and going through this stuff with me. I know we went pretty good ways today, but it's just good information that is going to help owner-operators or truck drivers in general, be better, be more successful, and get that physical done, check on their health. That's always good information. Anything else you'd like to add before we quit? Hey, how about this? If they have any questions, they can email me, send me an email, and then I'll shoot it to you.
Be glad to. Our clinic, we're just here in North Little Rock. It's Arkansas Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation is the name of our clinic. And we we do physicals and we do drug tests and lots of different things. But one of the things, if you've got a question out there, get a hold of Jeremy and let him get in touch with us, and we'll be glad to answer your questions. We do that for them all the time, because one of the things, Jeremy, that happened when we first started with you, what you just said about, well, the last place we had do these didn't tell us this. And so I would actually send over to Vicki lots of times the rule and regulation and guideline where here's what it says in here, just to let you guys know that, hey, I didn't make this stuff up. Somebody just wasn't following the guidelines. And so if the drivers out there just know that, hey, we want you driving, we're going to do everything to keep you driving as long as we can follow the rules and regulations. And if something slows us down a little bit, remember, it's to help you be able to take care of your health on your time, rather than waiting until a catastrophic event happens that takes you out of driving.
Yes, good advice right there. So if you do have questions or for Dr. Bennett, email me. We'll put my email up on the screen, and that way, they can come through me, I guess. And I know you're busy and got a lot of stuff going on, but we'll
unfortunately, some things wind up in my junk mail unintentionally. When people go there. So if it goes to you and comes to me, we've had enough conversations through email that it won't go there.
Yeah, got it. All right. Well, I sure appreciate you joining me today, and all good information, Dr. Bennett. I really do. It's good stuff. So I appreciate everybody watching the Oakley Podcast, listening to it. Every week we'll come out with a new one every Wednesday, so I hope this one helps you, and you got any questions, let me know. Talk to you next week.